Folks, today's show is empowering. A discussion with a Tri-Squad athlete, Mike Davison. Yes, Mike's a part of our Tri-Squad One-to-Many program. What he unpacks today is some of the very key ingredients that fuel athletic success through his own story. Someone that has been in the sport for a long time, leaned into coaching, not just following a training plan, community, a broad team of resources, becoming the CEO of his own journey in sport so that it can fuel broader life. It's an incredibly enjoyable conversation. It's also powerful. When you listen to today's show, if you're inspired to make a change, to create a better path for yourself, feel free to reach out. info@purplepatchfitness.com. We'll set up a complimentary needs assessment and we'll understand your goals, your challenges, your journey to ensure that you can leave with some actionable and practical tips to ensure you can be successful. And also, if you'd like, explain some of the programming and how we work with athletes to not only help them get faster, that's kind of the easy part, but also magnify all aspects of life. We'd love to have you as a part of the team. Reach out. It's pressure-free. info@purplepatchfitness.com. Enjoy the show. I'm Matt Dixon, and welcome to the Purple Patch Podcast. The mission of Purple Patch is to empower and educate every human being to reach their athletic potential. Through the lens of athletic potential, you reach your human potential. The purpose of this podcast is to help time-starved people everywhere integrate sport into life. And welcome to the Purple Patch Podcast. As ever, your host, Matt Dixon. And once again, we bring you a case study today, a conversation with a Purple Patch athlete. And it's one that I'm incredibly excited about. In fact, when we talked about having and welcoming Mike Davison onto the show, the whole Purple Patch team said that's a great idea. Because here is a guy who has been in the sport for a long time, is incredibly busy as a partner, as a father, and as a business professional, but also has gone through a journey in which, as he has become a part of the Purple Patch team, represents perhaps the best example of an athlete leaning in, maximizing the resources to get incredible personal results, not just in getting faster, but in magnifying all aspects of life. The importance of a growth mindset. The power of true coaching rather than just following a plan. How to leverage community to not just bring joy, but also have sounding boards to drive success. And also radical ownership over the journey so that you can keep having fun, enjoying it, and getting better. As he extends into his mid-50s, he keeps getting faster. This is a great story. And if you are either self-coached or you're working with a coach that is maybe a little bit frustrating and not giving you the ROI, this is a great catalyst to help you take ownership of your journey. And even if you're a Purple Patch athlete listening, I would really encourage you, take notes here, because Mike's a great testament of how to maximize your experience within the Purple Patch ecosystem. He's a great guy. He's a lot of fun. It was a wonderful conversation. And so without further ado, I'll stop my rabbiting and pass it on. The meat and potatoes I bring you, Purple Patch athlete Mike Davison. Thank you. All right, it is the meat and potatoes. And yes, as promised, I've got a very special guest today, ladies and gentlemen. Mike Davison, thank you for joining the show.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
You're a big part of Purple Patch. You are on our Tri-Squad program, and we are going to dig into some important topics today. We're going to talk about training. We're going to talk about navigating adversity. We're going to talk about what success is and how to build it for any athlete of any level, which is really important. We're going to talk about coaching as a theme, and we're also going to discuss community as well. And I'm really excited to dig in to your journey as an athlete. And I will say, as we go into this discussion, we put out this show pretty much every single week. I don't know how many years in we are. We're about 400 episodes in. Some of the most popular discussions are always with athletes that we coach that have a story to tell that we can dig into in a really organic way. So you've got a massive amount of pressure on your shoulders to excel today. I hope you're ready for
You
it.
bet. I'm there to support our tri squad, so you bet we're there.
There you go, great stuff. Well, as I always do, as I'm sure you're familiar, I think it's always really interesting. It's fascinating to me to not just accelerate into today, but actually start all the way back with the guests. And I'd love to understand. Give the listeners a little bit of your background, where you grew up, what your family situation was, educational background, and perhaps bring it forward as well, and tell people what you're doing professionally, family wise. We'll get into sports, but I want the really organic, juicy stuff first.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm an Aggie, Texan that lives in Chicagoland, so
Okay.
I'm sort of a misfit in the Midwest. We've been here for about 20 years, and
Mhm.
through that time, we also lived in California for my wife and I for a couple years. But I grew up in Texas after being born in Japan for a couple years,
Oh well.
and what was neat growing up was, just that the privilege of it's as crazy as it sounds, going to McDonald's. We were a family that didn't have much at all, right?
Hmm.
And so we appreciated the little things that we got. And so I started very, very early on, doing swim team. And, as I grew up, yeah, that swim base stuck with me. We'll talk a lot about that as we go. But went to Texas A&M. I was a member of the Corps Cadets, drum major of the Fighting Texas Aggie Band that we call it. And with that, it's kind of like a military academy. And
Yeah.
so you live together, as a corps of cadets, and it's like being in the academies. And with that, you have a lot of physical training that you do. And from there, graduated Texas A&M and worked at Abbott
Oh yeah.
for about 12 years, did medical sales and 50,000 miles a year in Bay Area traffic. That led me to Chicago, moving in house at the headquarters, and we've been here since. And with that, I've after there, I went over to Stericycle. We do medical waste, and we've since been acquired by WM. So I'm now a director within the healthcare business at the WM area, and so with that, I've had the challenge of how do you actually balance your career with a desire to exceed in sports. And that's a little bit about where I've come from and where I'm at today.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, it's quite a journey living in all those different places.
Go back as well, Choa, growing up in Texas, were you always you're on swim team, etc. So did you always start dancing with endurance sports, or were you doing other sports as well? Obviously, like the cadets was very physical, so
Yeah.
a sport almost within itself with all of the physical challenge. But before that and then afterwards, how did you sort of formally get into endurance sports? I'm interested on that journey.
Yeah. So I'm the guy that, you're working nonstop. I looked healthy, right?
Yeah.
But, that was on the outside. And on the inside, I didn't learn this until I was going and I was trying to get a extended life insurance policy. I've at the time 4 young kids with my wife,
Mhm.
and I did one of those at-home EKGs where they come by and the insurance
Oh yeah.
hooks
Yeah,
you
yeah.
up. And
I've done that as well. Yep.
the sad thing was I was borderline and I didn't get the policy initially. They sent me to my doctor, and my doctor says, "Well, I'll pass you," because I was borderline at the in-office EKG as well. He said, "I'll pass you, but you have to start exercising." So I go
Interesting.
home and I tell my wife this, and I'm like, "Oh, he says I have to start exercising." And I took that as actually a challenge,
Yeah.
more than just the cliche, "Okay, yeah, I'll do that." And ironically, a month prior, our neighbor went to my wife and said, "Don't say no, but here's a training plan." And our neighbor introduced my wife to triathlon, and I'm looking at this like swim, bike, run. I used to swim when I was little.
Yeah.
I know what that's about. I ran a lot in the Corps Cadets. I know what that's about. But they said, "Don't say no, but here's a training plan." They said that to me after I get this news from my doctor. And my comment was, "I'll do that if the husband next door will join his wife and let's go do this training plan together and let's do the race."
Wow.
And so that was 17 years ago, almost 18 now, back in 2008. The first race we ever did was the Spirit of Racine, the Blue Wave Triathlon in Racine, Wisconsin.
Fantastic.
And I had no idea what it was all about. And
Yeah.
boy, at the time, An 8-mile ride. Wow, that was like the pinnacle. Like I achieved Mount Everest in the world of get ready for a race because I had never really done any riding.
Yeah.
So that's really where I got into it. And over the course of all those years, it just has evolved. It has truly become a lifestyle for my wife, myself, and over the years, our kids used to do them when they were little. The kids
Oh,
tries,
yeah.
and the beauty of it right now is I've got three of the four kids, and one of the boyfriends is signed up to do a sprint here this next year. One of my daughters is going to be doing a 70.3, the first one, here this next year as well. So it's kind of like that. Hey, I've learned all this. Now we're bringing other people into the sport, and it's really a cool experience because now my A races are the races that I get to do with my family. And boy, to be at that spot after all this journey that I've been through is such a blessing.
It's just hovering on that. It brings me back. A couple of weeks ago, we released a podcast with Steve Magnus um, on kids in sport, and
Hmm.
one of the things that I talked about, it was a presentation I was doing at my son's school actually, and said one of the reasons that we want our kids to do sport when they're young is to ingrain the joy of sport so they can stay active when they're older.
Hmm.
And so I put that in mind. The other thing that's incredibly interesting and important is a lot of people as parents want you do the sport for themselves, but also want to be a role model. It's role modeling whether you're
Hmm.
realizing it for your kids and setting it of like, hey, I can take on challenges, I can do this, etc. But less them actually get to live through their kids finding the joy of that, finding the
That's right.
joy of sport and actually being competitive. So that's a great point of celebration and you should be really proud of that. That's
Well, and half of that is even the joy in the process, right? For
yeah,
the all the
exactly.
years that I've done training, I can show you pictures where I'm playing cards while I'm on an indoor bike trainer with my kids, or now it's integrating it in. So when I'm in the middle of a training plan, or like a session for bike, I can go and meet my kids at their college, ride with, and go back and spend time with them, swim with them at the rec center, run with them. They come home, I'll do a run, they'll be on a bike and we're talking. And
Yeah.
what they're also seeing through this, I think, is the ability of how when you're doing these other sports and training, you're actually able to have think time to solve the challenges of life. And that's
Yeah,
been cool
exactly.
to kind of decompress and have those moments with my kids where we're actually talking and sharing what's going on in their life while we're doing, for me, a training session. For them, it's kind of, hey, let's go test this out. And they're
Yeah.
seeing how that can work, just modeling it and doing it with them.
It's powerful. So I wanna dance to your journey with Purple Patch and the
Mhm.
Tri Squad, because I think there's some lessons there, for the listeners. Let's go back prior to you join, and how many years now is it with, Purple Patch?
2.5.
It's 2.5, so you're two and a
Yeah.
half years in, so we enough of a proving ground to
Oh,
have some
yes.
traction. So tell the listeners a little bit about pre-Purple Patch and perhaps what was working, what was not working, some of the challenges, some of the frustrations of that journey. I think it's important context.
Yeah. So what's interesting is I was also experiencing a really nice run where every year I was getting faster. And
Mhm.
I track everything as you'd expect. You
Yeah.
can see over time you're increasing your speed and your pace. And I got to a point where I plateaued and as I was looking for that breakthrough, right? But the counterbalance to that was doing all the things that were preventing me from getting that breakthrough. I'm that person. Hey, I had the motto. I train with triathlon Ironman so that I can eat whatever I want,
Yep, yep,
right?
yep.
And I
Mhm.
would eat whatever I want. I love donuts. I love chocolate cake. I did all of those indulgences far more than what you should do,
Mhm.
because I felt like I was creating space with the sessions I was doing that afforded me to do that. Really, not realizing that that was also not helping my athletic performance.
Mhm.
And then, at the same time, um, I got to that point where literally I'm just going and doing the session in front of me and not doing it with intention, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I would swim and it would be, you know, endless laps without drills. It would be a training session on the bike where it was always outside, always the same course. literally. And so I was not doing strategic rides inside, coming and
Yep.
learning skills. And so, and then on the run, I've done hundreds of miles on the exact same course around my house, and not a lot of variation to it, with, again, not a lot of intention. So
Accumulating time, accumulating miles,
for
building
sure.
fitness, but
Yes.
not on the leading edge. One would
Exactly. That's
one
exactly
listener would
right.
say.
And but what was worse was I got to a spot where, through COVID, right? I
Mhm.
ended up, after COVID, with the long COVID, right? I would get to a point where I literally struggled to do 1 mile without my heart rate going crazy, right?
Mm.
So that was my starting point in all of this. And I did a lot of, the how do you build your fitness when you've got that, and I tried to do all of that on my own. And I got to a reasonable spot, was able to get my fitness back up, but I was fearful as I hit that plateau
Yep.
that at at the time, what, 53 at the time, 52 at the time, I thought to myself, "Is this the start of the end?"
Yep,
Right?
of
Am I at
course,
the
yeah.
spot where I'm gonna start, I've got, less years in front of me than I do behind me. Does that mean my fitness journey is going to start declining? And
Mhm.
I set myself on the challenge that said, "No, that's not gonna be the case." But I said, "I want to actually prove to myself that I can do this sport as I'm getting older and overcome what I feel like are some of these challenges that I created for myself, with not adhering to a better plan, not
Mhm.
adhering to better coaching, nutrition, just doing it as it came. And I needed something more. And really, that's where I came to the spot of, I needed that to be able to break through. And that's where the Tri Squad, and granted, I was doing the wonderful plans in the book that you and your team have
Mhm.
written, but I wasn't breaking through because I wasn't getting the supplemental coaching that helped you understand very specific things that you as an athlete may have, as that you're facing, and how to tweak those, or even make very large adjustments to your approach so that you can seek the results that you're really trying to achieve.
What you showed there for folks that are watching this, not listening, was the Fast Track Triathlete, which is the second book. I had an amazing editor for both those books, the same editor twice, and I battled in both to not put training plans in them. And it was exactly for that reason. I said, "Where's the nuance? It's going to send people down the path." Now, I am glad there were training plans in the second book, because a lot of people have benefited
Mhm.
and enjoyed them. But you're exactly right. So I guess you'd hit this plateau, you'd had success, and there are going to be so many people listening right now that was like, "Oh, I've been there, or I am there," which
Mhm.
is, I hit my late 40s, early 50s, and it's like, "Uh-oh." And I can't tell you how many times I have people that are thinking about joining that say, is it the right mindset to just try and not slow down too much?
Mhm.
And I'm always, F that, let's keep getting faster. So we're going to dig into your journey a little bit, but I am interested in, and maybe the book was the catalyst, but what made you decide to choose Purple Patch? And we're not doing an advertorial for Purple Patch
Yeah,
per
yeah,
se
yeah.
today, but what drew you to our coaching? And secondly, you chose, and for listeners that don't know, you didn't decide to go and get a one-to-one coach where you've got an individual
That's right.
relationship. You were missing coaching, but you chose Tri Squad, which is, I always say, the benefit. It's still coaching, the benefit of all of the coaching team, but it's still more autonomous. You're still on your own journey with big support. So so I'm interested, like, in that, and what that
Yeah.
transition was like for you.
Sure. So what's interesting is, in your Fast Track Triathlete book, it talks about Tri Squad, right?
Mm,
And so, as I successfully used the training plan to get through halves and fulls, um, I thought to myself, "Wow, what if I logged into Tri Squad and I first tipped my toe into looking at the resources that were available for free?"
oh yeah. Mhm.
And as I started looking at those, it piqued my interest. And then, literally, I didn't know anything about it except for what I was seeing when I was going online. And as I searched more and more, and realized that it is a much more sophisticated training plan that integrates into Training Peaks, and then you can actually adjust your schedule. Because what I really loved in both the Training Peaks and the book, and just your underlying philosophy of the key sessions, and
Yeah.
others that are sort of the recommended
Supporting.
sessions. The
Yeah.
first ones that if you had to let go because the life gets busy, the concept of what you can let go and what you need to still do, that concept was one where, okay, it worked successfully in the book, but I wanted more than that
Yeah.
because I knew I was at that plateau and the only way to do something more was to get some coaching, and I didn't necessarily feel like I needed a one-to-one. So
Yeah.
I was very much just, let me see what it's like to sign up, see what it's like to be part of the Tri Squad, talk to Tiger, learned a lot more about how it worked. We did a quick little, let's do a test, you do a demo, and I
Yeah.
started to see how that worked. And fast forward, the type of resources that you guys have made available and recommend to the Tri Squad athletes, whether it's the blood testing that you do with the Inside Tracker,
Mhm.
it's the Fuel In app for how to do your nutrition. You would do podcasts a couple years ago where you talk about how to optimize your nutrition, and so much of that was about, hey, if you're training in the morning, and here's how you optimize your nutrition in the day. Well, I'm a busy, person that likes to actually train in the evenings, almost
Mhm.
always,
Yeah.
and except on the weekends. And I didn't know how to adapt. And so when you guys show that there's not just you and the power of your coaches, but then you guys have partnerships and you have recommendations that are in the best interest of your athletes to get the most out of them by having them integrate some things into their lifestyle that will help them overall, create a new paradigm for me. Instead of eat however I want, it was, let an app integrate with your training plan to tell you what to eat, when to eat, so that, like, I literally thought I was doing everything right and realized, even with my wife being a registered dietitian, I would think in ultimate wisdom, well, she doesn't know what she's doing on how to plan a meal. And I would either go all carbs or all protein, right? And
Mm.
at the same time, I needed to understand how to integrate sport and at a higher level into my life. And I felt like the platform that you guys provided with the flexibility of moving sessions around, tap into coaches as you need, really created a catalyst that I realized, wait a second, not only is this underlying plan helpful, but when I have personal questions that tie to, how do I adjust my nutrition when I train in the evenings? How do I, adjust my training on the bike when I'm literally stuck at the 50 percentile in my age group and I can't get breakthroughs on my own, no matter what I do with a book, right? So
Yeah.
that led to some very productive coaching sessions, and I've had one-on-ones with multiple of the coaches where I've sought out
Mm.
from different perspectives from different ones because I felt like, hey, there are value of each one that they can bring with a different lens to a different problem you're trying to solve. So it was really, me wanting to get more out of it than what I was getting. I couldn't do it on my own.
That last couple of minutes there, you were making my heart sing because for a couple of levels though, and I think it's important. Though I think one of the things that we do poorly is really communicating. This is more than a plan. You are actually in a coaching program
Hmm.
with a whole bunch of resources, and you said something. I'm going to go back, and then I'm going to ask you a question around the conversations because I think that's a really interesting thing to dig into. But you talked about partnerships in the best interests of the athlete. It,
Hmm.
it, it's it's very, very important. In fact, one of the things that we don't have at Purple Patch is we don't have, we're sponsored by Cervelo or Trek or Ventum. We're sponsored by blah 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 because there are lots of great bikes that are suitable for different people. So we've always tried to avoid very specific, narrow sponsorships with particular product companies. What we do try and have is build partnerships, which is minimal, if zero, economic gain for Purple Patch, but is gain for the athlete. Because the
Hmm.
ultimate success is we're going to have athletes stick around if they can be more successful. So it's really nice to hear sort of
Hmm.
the lens of that and the utilization of that. The one thing that is very, very important, because we're going to dig into the coaching, is there is the program at large with all of the support and the training and everything else, but it's the consultation and exactly that. If you're going to leverage this, if someone is going to lean in and get the most out of it, there's a lot of brain trust and
Hmm.
wisdom. It's not just this dumb English guy up front that spouts off and happens to sit on this show. we've got some incredibly smart coaches, Nancy, Brad, Max, John, etc. And you've really leaned into that, and very affordable as well. And I point out to the listeners, but supplemental consults. What role? I'd love to sort of understand what are just a couple of examples of what the conversations were. What are some of
Sure.
the challenges you were looking to solve? Number two, what was the role of that in your trajectory and progression as a part of the squad?
Sure, and I do keep a notebook of all of my,
I was
consultant
suspicious you
notes,
might. Yeah.
so I can go back and, refresh on each one of them, but,
Yeah.
the first one that I had done was, Coach Mike with his handy bandy monster bandies, right,
Yeah.
was all about, "Hey, I'm getting into the first off season, and what's the best way to adjust my schedule when I want to integrate skiing?" Which I'm an avid ski racer,
Great.
pretty
Yeah.
much every weekend. And I knew I was not going to be able to keep up with exactly the training plan, but I didn't want to not do something over the winter.
Yeah.
So what he helped me do was figure out a training plan around and customize the plan. That's again, it's not just what is on paper. It's
Yeah.
what fits
Exactly.
into your
And
life. And so very much was I'm trying to get a Monday through Sunday plan on what will my schedule be like. So as simple as that, and through that, um, Coach Mike initially. So, tell me about your swim. How fast are you? What's your time? So we talk, and he's like, well, okay, so you're a good swimmer. First thing, you need to swim more. And I'm like, wait a second. Um, it's the off season now. I need to swim less, and so that got me down a path of got to swim more, and the whole concept of that frees up the ability to build your cardio capacity, and then when you get on the run, you're stronger for that,
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and so you're more fresh for that.
Mhm.
So that was a really big surprise. But then that came out of, hey, let's build a plan that works for you over the winter to customize for what your needs are.
Yeah.
And then I got to a spot where I was working towards Eagle Man, and that is about as flat of a course as you could ever
Yeah.
imagine.
Yeah.
And all of the sessions that we've typically gone through, and you did a very focused thing on how to do a hilly course. And I'm like, great, but that doesn't help me with a flat course.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, and how do I adapt to a flat course? And so there was discussions around that first with Coach John and then with Coach Brad on
Mm.
what type of cadence and duration of cadence do I do, kind of modulating, 8 minutes, 10 minutes on at a lower cadence with 2 minutes with a higher cadence, and doing that alternating over time. It was very much, hey, I've got a specific race and I need to adapt my training towards it. And the one size fits all in a lot of ways of the plan that we get on velocity, it doesn't take into account per se flat course, hilly course.
Yeah.
And the irony to it is, you know, getting ready for the world championships, right? I go from qualify on the flat courses and then go race on the hilly courses. And
Yeah.
so there was a lot of how do you prep for that as well. So there was subsequent sessions with Brad and got insights from you as well on how do I adapt a session where I want to go do my own training camp. We went out to the Blue Ridge Mountains, several
Oh,
days
great.
out there, and adapted my training from flat course to hilly course. I needed to dial in the gears, dial in the pacing so that I could be prepared for the Nice course, which, by the way, is not an easy one.
It's not an
But
easy course, no.
those courses help with that, and through the midst of all of that, um, we talked about some of the philosophies that I had when I was talking with Coach Brad. I think he fell out of his seat when I told him that my philosophy when I get to a hilly course was to pull up on a gear because I had to preserve myself over time.
Mhm.
And it's like exactly the opposite of that. You need to add a gear as you're reaching up a hill. And, it's the whole concept that you teach all the time on velocity,
Yeah.
on how to maximize that. And my philosophy leading up prior to that was completely opposite. Like I did not do that at all. It was preserve myself. And I had to learn not to preserve myself. So there was a big balance on how to do that. And then the other thing in a session with Brad, which was quite interesting, was I was describing to him what I was doing for nutrition because I was asking how to optimize that. And then he's like, wait a second, how do you do nutrition? And it was a nutrition plan that was founded in probably 10-year-old thought processes.
Yeah.
And so he introduced me to the whole concept of separating your fuel from hydration.
Hmm.
And that led to, well, how do you carry this stuff when you're on the bike and you have the separate things
Yeah,
instead of,
really practical challenge. Yeah.
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 And so for those practical things were really helpful to get some, very simple. How do you carry nutrition,
Yeah.
your hydration on a run when you don't want to use the on-course hydration? Where do you carry it? And
Yeah.
so even simple things, right? So from more complex to simple, it was wonderful tapping into these folks to get, some insights that I needed personally to help break through some of the challenges that I was facing at the time.
Yeah. A lot of the stuff is really that it's almost well, I guess it's what coaching is, yeah, but it's all of the nuance stuff. So
Mhm.
the core was this really like you have commitment, you show up, you're executing the training, you're empowered to self manage and integrate that training, and it's all of the stuff that's really nuanced and really interesting as you sort of reflect on your performance journey. You improved, you went through that plateau. You've leaned in. What's happened? And I'm going to ask this in the broadest sense of performance. So I'm going to ask it in terms of your race performance. I'm also want to also have you answer it in terms of energy health and everything else
Uh,
that goes along with showing up, because that's a big part of the reason that you're doing this. And it sounds like you're having more fun with it as well. So,
mhm.
so what's the? I'll say answer it how you want. What's the impact been? You can
Yeah.
dance
Well,
around.
I think the ultimate impact is what's your spouse say? So my wife, Nancy, wonderful supporter.
Mm,
Um, and the biggest thing I think she's seen is when I'm in the midst of training and really ramping up, it's kinda, "Wow, you're not grumpy," right?
yeah,
And it's that overall fatigue that when you're not, uh, fueling right and you're not recovering right,
yeah.
that can really stress you, as, in your mind, in your body, and so I would say just overall, it's the ability to kind of get a better, sort of mindset, um, where I'm much more calm. Like even
Mm,
before the big races, right? When I'm fueling right and I'm fresh, I'm fit, and I'm ready to go, I'm not overly worried about things, and I'm much, much, much more calm and not grumpy. And I think that's an exclamation point when it comes from an endorsement from your spouse that
yeah,
tells you, hey, things are working well for you. And so that's kind of the underpinnings that I would say is validation that you can
mm,
see a difference. And of course, when I look at athletic performance, right, I get nothing but satisfaction. It's one thing where you go and let's do the world championships in Nice and Spain, but then sometimes even just those local races,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
I just this last year I did a local race, and mind you, I've typically been in the 50 percentile ish on the bike, and it's just a frame of reference. I was able to be 6th overall on the bike itself, which in my mind validates the fact that I'm doing the right thing. It's a hilly course, knew when to press it, knew
Yep.
how to get the speed out of the course. And from that to even, I just recently did the Purdue 5K and I repeated the title of top in my age group, and that was one where I set a PR this last race that I did in a 5K, and I was not even trying to. I ended up having a little bit of tendonitis in my Achilles, and my intention was pull back, don't go too hard. And ironically, with that, I was
You
so trained
flowed.
up that I do a 5K. I'm sorry, I do a 5K PR, and I get done, and I look at my heart rate, and it was well in check with where it needed to be, and athletic performance was exactly where I wanted to be for that. So that was nothing but satisfaction when I look back and I have these small little markers that I can see, whether it's big race or small race, that validate, hey, you're on the right track, you're doing the right things. I wouldn't be there if it weren't for implementing these little things that allow yourself to get validated as you do these even smaller races.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. I wanna ask you something. You're a big part of our community. I also know, we took a lot of athletes too, as we typically do, to the World Championships, to other races. And I know it's a big part of joy for you as it is all the
Mhm.
other athletes to meet up, especially some people that you've never met in person, but because of the video coaching and everything else. So I know that you met Gretel, who's one of my
Yes,
favorites
Mexico.
from Mexico. Um, the but I want to lean into that because triathlon is an individual sport. Most people, whether they're living in Kansas, Chicago, New York, or Dubai, London, it doesn't matter where they think about. I need a coach or a plan to help me get faster. A big part of what we do is really think about this not just as a team of coaches, but a team of like-minded individuals that are chasing personal improvements, looking
Hmm.
to improve under the big banner of what we see as high performance. You're a big part of that. You've really leaned into,
Hmm.
as is very clear from our conversation, the resources that we offer. You've also, though, leaned into community. So I just love your thoughts on the role of that it's had for you as a human and as an athlete.
Yeah, for sure. So it was neat, actually. Here I'm in Spain, and everyone's
Mhm.
going around introducing themselves. And Brad had some fantastic words that really energized everybody. And Gretel introduces herself, and when you're on Velocity, you see these names. It's really cool when you meet them, the different folks in person, and
Yeah,
and so that was a special time, and we saw her a couple times, even before and then after the race. But that community is something that when you're doing a book, you don't have the community, right?
yeah,
And what I've also very much enjoyed is part of the community that you guys have afforded is there's the online side of things, and folks build some really nice post-race reports. It's a great
yeah,
place that you can ask for recommendations, and you can read, people's experiences and lean into them. Meeting different folks at multiple races. Brooks was another one that I saw
oh
at both
yeah,
races,
yeah,
which was neat,
amazing.
and putting names and faces together. I would just say that, I very much in my everyday training, I train by myself when I'm on the road, when I'm running. Why? Because when you're in the race, you don't have other people there with you per se. It is an individual sport, but the
Yeah,
beauty of it is you've got a community of resources and other athletes. And then when you've got the platform, you've got a community of folks that you're pressing together to help encourage each other. And that's been a cool thing for me that I've really enjoyed because I don't get that community, if you will, by choice with everyday, training when I go outside. I don't listen to music. I don't do all the I'm focused on me, my training, what I can do to improve what I'm doing. And what I
yeah.
like is be able to step away from that, tap into the resources that Purple Patch has on the online app and the community that's created there.
Yeah, no, it's terrific, and I mean, one of the big reasons that we do training camps or we try and go to some of the races in the year is there's nothing more fulfilling than, especially as you say, seeing because we've got so much video coaching, or in our hub, of course, the online community, and there's people sharing stories.
Mhm.
I'm always amazed. We had one the other day. One of my favorites, Meredith, that said, "Hey, my neck's really hurting. Anyone got advice on this?" And there was bam, 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 people
Right.
coming, sharing similar challenges and going from there. Um, so really, really valuable. The I'm going to ask you two questions actually,
Mhm.
because there's a lot of people that are listening that are either self-coached or maybe in a coaching situation that is not ideal. They're not getting the most out of, and they're thinking about their year ahead, their season ahead, and without the answer just being, "Hey, come and join Purple Patch." But what what are the things when they are looking and talking to coaches or programs? If you had to distill down from your experience, you've been in the sport a long time, you got a lot of success, etc. What are the things that you would give as advice to someone that is charting their next journey that's either frustrated or never been coached before or looking to up level? What are the things to look for in a program that you think are most important?
Sure. So to me, the idea of I'm training versus being coached is underpinning that
Yeah,
folks need to have as a mindset, right? Because you have to welcome the idea that you want to have people invest in you and that you're going to meet them at that level and extract out of it what they're trying to give to you, right?
yeah,
So what I think is a special sauce with Purple Patch is the skills that come out of this. I think is well proven. The strong biking and bikers that are created from this, and the strong running, the strong swimming, is the method to the madness on the skill building that we get as athletes. That and the time starved nature of the program, right?
Yeah.
The
Yep.
fact that it's not, you have to do everything, and here's the bar. If you want to qualify, you have to do everything. It's about miles and about hours. This is about how do you build it. It's all the cliches that you've said. It's how do you build triathlon into your life, not vice versa.
Yep.
And so, being that you guys have these philosophies that I think work well, you know, I'm, you know, uh, 4 kids, my wife, extremely busy. If it were any other philosophy, and I've tried a philosophy where it's go do a lot of, um, training plans, it's about hours and miles. That was actually the worst race that I've ever had,
Yep.
and it didn't meet me where I needed on the concept that you can focus on key sessions and you can build skills while you're doing it. And I think that's the paradigm that I would ask folks really press into, to understand when you're looking at a coach, what is their history of producing athletes that are achieving great results. I think you have a very strong history of that. But then does the methodology and the philosophy fit into your ability to merge triathlon into your life
I,
instead
I
of vice versa?
I think there's that, that's very, very important. And I would even extend it as well of like really making sure that beyond the results of people that are somewhat similar to you, not just, oh, I've created world champions, number one, which
Hmm.
I have done as well. But also, does the ethos, does the mindset, does the methodology jive with how you see the sport?
Hmm.
And that's a big
Hmm.
part of the community. Because when you find the right approach. And I always say this, look, Purple Patch is not for everyone. We're not the right we have a profile. It's a big tent, obviously. We're a larger organization, but it's very, very important. And even when we have conversations, we make sure, hey, we might not be the right fit for you, but here's some opportunities there are. So I think that's a great message of really,
Hmm.
I think the two, if I can re-summarize it for you, which is make sure you don't go and just think about it as training, think about it
Right.
as coaching.
That's right.
That's number one. I think it's so critical. And number two, make sure that it really jives with a philosophical underpinning of that. So here's another question. Here's my second from last question, which is we also are going to have listeners who are purple patch athletes who are actually on the tri squad program or the run squad or the strength, etc. And under that in mind, what would you have obviously maximized the resources, you've leveraged consultations, you lean into the community. For someone to be successful, if you had to give 30 seconds of advice to an existing purple patch athlete in one of the one to many
Hmm.
group coaching type athletes, what would your advice be? What would you say, hey, if you do A, B, and C, this is how you're going to maximize not just your experience, but everything
For
that you get
sure.
out of it?
Getting back to the partnership concept that you guys have, right?
Mm,
First, go do the blood testing, right?
yeah.
That revealed to me that I had a ferritin deficiency. I was getting fatigued in races. I didn't know why it was happening. And that led me to iron supplementation as well as other supplements that it recommended or to help
Yeah.
with inflammation that I was having in my body.
Yeah.
You don't know, you can't guess what it is that's causing whatever it is that you've got, or there may be something that you don't realize is there. Number one, go get the blood test.
Hmm.
Number two, you think you know how to eat right, even with a dietitian under my roof. I had infinite wisdom that I knew what I was doing, and you have to press into that, I believe, and that's going to change your thinking. You're going to start looking at food. Oh wait, carbs and proteins, they're married together. You
Yeah.
need to eat them together. You talk about that all the time, but that is essential. And then what I would say is, as you're trying, again, I'm not getting anything out of this, obviously, right? I
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
care
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
the health of the athlete so that they can understand what I've done, and it's really as basic as those two things. Plus, as I've had these multiple consults with coaches, have a consult. Talk about with them the struggle that you're trying to figure out for yourself. Whether it's I'm trying to adapt my training plan to make it fit where I'm at in my life and the things that I want to do, or hey, I'm struggling with something about swim, bike, run, or nutrition, whatever, they can help and they'll get you on the path of trajectory that will make leaps and bounds. 30 minutes is all it takes, right? To
Yeah.
go and have that. And you never know what insights you're going to get. I go and I start these consults thinking I've got one question. And through the course of that dialogue, it opens something in the mind of the coach that they need to give me different advice than even what I was coming into it with. So I would say that, and then, the whole idea of building your training on Sundays so that you are very intentional through the week in the busyness of life. When you've got, things coming up in work and with family, you have to balance those. And if you're just taking training day to day to day, and you're not really thinking about how you want to integrate it in and where you're going to integrate it in deliberately, I feel like that's a miss. And I feel like that's one of the things that I had done and continue to do to be sure that I'm able to have the balance in life that I need, be there for my family, as well as get out of the sport of what I hope to get out. Now, because I have to do this to keep my heart healthy. My big
Yeah.
why in all of this is, do this because I have to, we high blood pressure history, as I talked about before in my family, where if I don't keep myself in check, then there won't be triathlon to keep doing. So that's really a motivation for me. And I think if folks would just adapt to a couple of these things that I'm talking, they'll be surprised at some of the gains that they'll get, even early in the sport. If I started these things not at year 15, but started them at year 1, 2, 5, 10, I mean, that's a lot of years to be
Yeah,
doing the wrong
exactly.
things and not
Yeah.
optimizing things. So that's really where I would go with this with the folks.
It's interesting, and I always hesitate when I talk about some of this stuff, and you'll understand why when I say it. But with consultations, people that do lean into the consultations, we obviously track and really enjoy seeing the people that have breakthrough performances, whether it is qualifying, winning, but also just self improvement. The one continual through line of across the Tri Squad program and other squads is almost always people are leveraging to one degree or another
Hmm.
consultations to
Hmm.
supplement. That's a constant. It also has a direct impact on how long people stick around on the program because they're probably getting more out of it and they're
Hmm.
satisfied. So I'm glad you mentioned it. Here's my last question very quickly. If you wanted listeners, here's your last chance. You're standing on Hyde Park corner in London on the box, and you're preaching to the listeners going by. What's the one thing from your journey that you would love people to remember and take away with?
For sure. Well, first off, thanks for having me today. It's
Yeah.
been a pleasure, and y'all have done so much for me. And getting back to that concept of, are you training versus being coached? And that is the number one thing. Like, getting back to your wonderful book, um, you know, I got a lot of great good out of that, and I had some great races with it. I built a lot of skills with it, but not like I have, since I pressed into the coaching
Coaching.
that we get. And that is bar none the most important thing, because when you press into that, you're going to have a plethora of resources. You're going to have a nice community. And I honestly believe that the way that you guys have structured this, you're going to get the most out of your training, when you really tap into the coaching, and it's not and it becomes a lifestyle in that. So that's what I would really press on, is that concept, because it's been a difference maker for me.
Well, Mike, thank you so much, and I have one more thing to say, which is best of luck for the year ahead. Don't
Thank you
mess it
very
up,
much.
and keep going on the journey. But you're a great testament of Purple Patch, and such a fun conversation to have, and I think packed full of lessons for the listeners. So I really appreciate your time and all of the preparation you did. It's great, and thank you for being a massive part of Purple Patch. I really appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you very much. Appreciate all you've done for me and the Tri Squad.
Thank you, mate. What a great conversation, and what a path forward. Inspirational to help you get the most out of your journey through the lens of someone that is living it just like you. If you'd like to be a little bit like Mike and maximize your coaching and performance journey, reach out to us. info@purplepatchfitness.com. We'll set up a complimentary needs assessment or see if you're a fit, and if nothing else, it's pressure-free. We want to make sure that you leave with some actionable tips to fuel your performance journey. Until next week, take care. Guys, thanks so much for joining, and thank you for listening. I hope that you enjoyed the new format. You can never miss an episode by simply subscribing. Head to the Purple Patch channel of YouTube and you will find it there and you could subscribe. Of course, I'd like to ask you, if you will subscribe, also share it with your friends, and it's really helpful if you leave a nice positive review in the comments. Now, any questions that you have, let me know. Feel free to add a comment and I will try my best to respond and support you on your performance journey. And in fact, as we commence this video podcast experience, if you have any feedback at all, as mentioned earlier in the show, we would love your help in helping us to improve. Simply email us at info@purplepatchfitness.com or leave it in the comments of the show at the Purple Patch page, and we will get you dialed in. We'd love constructive feedback. We are in a growth mindset, as we like to call it. And so feel free to share with your friends. But as I said, let's build this together. Let's make it something special. It's really fun. We're really trying hard to make it a special experience, and we want to welcome you into the Purple Patch community. With that, I hope you have a great week. Stay healthy, have fun, keep smiling, doing whatever you do. Take care.